Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. We are previewing the wild card weekend, the super wild card weekend in postseason. Gets kicked off. John McKechnie and Mario Puig here. We're going to get into best ball strategy for playoff pools and break down every single game on this slate. Let's get into it. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for Friday, the 13th, January 13th. John McKechnie and Mario Puig hanging out with you, getting you ready for Super Wild Card Weekend. Mario, how are you doing? How did your season finish up, your regular season? And, what are you thinking as far as this weekend, your general thoughts?
Pretty bad, but I don't know. I don't have any thoughts about this weekend either. It's 3 games that are good, I guess. I don't know. Sorry, I don't care, actually.
I personally, I was traveling to LA on Sunday, so I was able to keep up with the NFL action, but the matchups and everything didn't really sink in with me until like Wednesday evening. So I've been in the take minds, getting everything lined up for this podcast and the RotoWire sports betting podcast and everything. But yeah, it took me a minute to really get excited for this one, even though, technically my favorite team is in the playoffs. Not feeling so great about it. And I'm just kind of basking in my alma mater and their ability to hang 65 points in the national championship game. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounded fun. I can understand how that could also maybe keep your attention through Sunday a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I guess later in the playoffs should be entertaining. It's just at this point, like you said, it kind of feels like it's just I don't know. It's like the most entertaining one is probably like Jacksonville Chargers or something like that. I guess some people care about Dallas, Tampa Bay, but it's like no one on the NFC side is going anywhere, and or San Francisco might, but they don't even have an interesting game. So it's like the most interesting games on this slate are like Jacksonville Chargers and Vikings Giants, things that just we know are going nowhere for the playoffs toward the end. So it just kind of feels like it's a half playoffs, half preseason kind of slate or something.
Right. Yeah, it feels like 3 of these outcomes are pretty much predetermined. We have 2 games with 9.5 point spreads. That would be the Niners being favored and the Bengals favored by that much. And then the Bills, 13.5 point favorites against the Dolphins. It's too bad because, the game that we saw in December between the Dolphins and the Bills when the Dolphins were fully healthy was, I thought one of the better regular season games of the season. And those two just in general matchups were both fantastic during the regular season. But when you get Skylar Thompson in there, it's just not going to go super well, super smoothly for the Finns there. So, but we are going to run through each of those games regardless, as we always do. And before that, however, let's get into some playoff best ball strategies. So where did you draft and what were kind of like your main focuses, strategies for each of those sites and what kind of team builds did you try to target as you went through?
So I actually posted on the site rankings for underdog best ball and particularly their tournament system. I don't know if their non-tournament formats score any differently than the tournament one. I don't know the full breadth of formats that they offer, but there's a bunch. And the headliners though are these tournament kind of pools that they have at the I don't know. There's one like the Mitten, something like they got the variation depending on the buy-in count. So you got like a $5, a $25, maybe even one more expensive than that. And if I'm reading those rules right, apparently you got to advance each round rather than like finish with a point total after 4 weeks and just clicking descend, on the league. Apparently it's like for the tournament formats, you need some semblance of balance because you need to put up the highest point total in the wild card round, the divisional round, the advancing score, I should say, because it's not like the highest score, but like high enough to advance to the next round of the game structure. So yeah, I can imagine some formats where players like the Chargers players aren't that necessarily useful because they might only play 2 games. And if you're doing a format that scores over the whole length of the playoffs to determine the winner, then you really want to chase like games played specifically. Whereas
Right.
I think with a format where you have to put up a high total in each round, that uh, maybe makes it worth more so chasing just the points in general. Like if I think like Austin Eckler is going to put up 60 fantasy points in these first 2 games, which he easily could if they advance past the Jaguars, that is, then I could imagine a lot of people that otherwise faded him wished they had maybe picked him. Even if they weren't going for, you shouldn't do a Chargers stack, but and basically finding enough in that first week, especially, so that you can even get the rewards of an otherwise coveted asset like any of the biggest name Chiefs players or Eagles, I guess, too.
Right. So yeah, that's an interesting wrinkle where you have to balance that out. And like you mentioned, when you have, the Chiefs and the Eagles both on bye this weekend, both kind of expected to at least make the championship round, it's tough to balance that versus, you got to get there first. You got to get all the way, to the divisional round in order to, have the fruits of your labor pay off essentially. So you got to get in on some of these teams that might be one and done. Did you feel like that kind of informed the way that the ADP shook out? And were there any team stacks that or I suppose you're not really stacking
Well,
those
you
one
do
and dones.
some because you got to get those. You got to get Super Bowl points. So, or to reach the highest prize anyway, you have to get Super Bowl points, and to do that, you kind of just at some point with what you have to work with from your draft slot, you have to kind of commit to a theory of at least one team getting there. And so, like, I'm not going to say you need to get both teams, but like if the Eagles make it and you're probably not going to be able to get Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown. You might be able to get Hurts and Devontae. That's also kind of stretching it. But if you have Hurts and somehow a couple other Eagles who do, Goddard and Miles Sanders or something, and if they all three have big games, it's like maybe that would be enough, even if all of your other players are eliminated by that point. But you need to get, I don't know. Sorry, there's probably some kind of like somebody could probably like run the numbers and tell you like the number of kind of points you realistically need in that round to contend in that round. I'm not sure what the number would be, but I think if you get like 3 players that can actually contribute from, and ideally a quarterback being one of them, on one Super Bowl team, then that sounds, I don't know, that seems to me like that should be a pretty decent ticket, even if it's not like a clinching one or anything. But yeah, so you can't just like you can't corner yourself into the likelihood of only having at most like 1 or 2 players in the Super Bowl is the reason that I mentioned the stacking thing. So one thing I've just kind of done a very lowbrow attempt at that by just kind of getting Chiefs. I feel like you can get guys like Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, even Pacheco kind of goes pretty late. And if you're picking those guys, you're just kind of, for that team, you're subscribing to the theory of, well, the Chiefs are going to make the Super Bowl. And if they do, then even though players like, Hardman and Valdez-Scantling, what was the other one? Oh,
Oh,
Tony,
Pacheco,
Tony. So
Tony.
yeah, Kadarius Tony. Like those guys, they go kind of late because they're unreliable. But if you get 3 games out of them, including the Super Bowl, and if Mahomes goes nuts in the Super Bowl, it's like that's how that could maybe be enough for the Super Bowl. Even if you're not going to get Mahomes and Kelsey, unfortunately, or
Right.
unless you do like an auction format or something. I can't imagine that that's possible. So yeah, you need. In any case, it's if for the underdog type thing, some kind of balance, just budgeting like on a weekly kind of basis is what you got to try to do, I think. And then with your best option for your slots for the remaining players available, commit to like some team, even if it's like a long shot. I mean, like, if there have been seasons where a wild card team had won the Super Bowl. So if you were doing playoff best ball that year, then I don't know, was it the Eli Manning Giants or something when they beat the Patriots? Might have been a wild card team. It's like they would have been pretty low in the ADP because people wouldn't have been projecting them to make the Super Bowl. But if someone had stacked them anyway, it would have been I guess they would have needed a couple other things to fall right, but like that would have been a way to make a high point total in the Super Bowl in a best ball format, even though it wasn't made of juggernauts or who were considered juggernauts at the time anyway.
Right, exactly, because you keep accumulating those points week after week, and especially in a tournament type of thing, you get a lot of leverage over the field if you take one of those long shots, and it ultimately pays off. On DraftKings, I thought it was interesting. So I did a DraftKings one last night, and I did an underdog earlier. An underdog, much shallower, that much less of a need to dumpster dive than on DraftKings.
Yeah, it's 10 rounds and 6 teams on underdog, I believe.
Correct. Whereas in DraftKings, I think it was like a 20-man roster. So
Wow.
my last pick was Kevontae Turpin, for example. In that one, I'm like, all right, get me a punt return touchdown, maybe. I think Kyle Juszczyk is even on my team in that one. So I mean, you get pretty deep in the weeds on that one. But my strategy for the DraftKings, or the way the board fell, and I just kind of ended up chasing the approach was, I'm of the belief that the Bengals can win the Super Bowl, or at least make it. I'm terrified of Joe Burrow. I think that guy has ice water in his veins, maybe as much as anyone in the league. The guy's just ridiculous, clutch, and extremely talented. I think that he can take them there. I think that people are mentioning the offensive line injury issues here late in the season, getting into the playoffs, and are they back to square one as to where they were a year ago? But I don't know. I think that Burrow now has a season of playoff experience under his belt. They kind of absorbed the Super Bowl hangover, as it were, and they look more dangerous right now than they did going into the postseason last year. So, I mean, I tried to get as much of them as I could. I got Burrow, Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and P. Ryan on that roster. Got a couple of Giants here and there. I have Zay Jones on both of my teams. Trevor Lawrence on both of my teams.
I wanted to mention, John. One player who's a really tough one for me is ETN, because I don't expect the Jaguars to win that game, but especially for the underdog thing, where it's like if you got to get points in the wild card round, it's like ETN could have like 35 points in that game because the Chargers' run defense is just completely absent, and they could still lose, kind of like comfortably to the Chargers. And it's like, he doesn't. The problem is, it's like he doesn't go quite cheap. You're not going to get him in like the last round in an underdog thing. But it's like, what is the value of a one-off like 30+ point kind of running back? And it's like, I could imagine it mattering a lot or not at all. I just have no idea how to tell which way it would go. But yeah, that's a tough one to leave on the board, because it's like you'll be choosing between like him and like Elijah Mitchell or something, and it's so tempting to go for like that really, the one that looks so easy for 1 week, even if it's only 1 week. But it's probably better to take Elijah Mitchell, because he could give you like, I don't know, like 4 games and 3 of them could have double-digit points or something. I don't know.
Yep, I have Mitchell on my underdog team. Got him at pick 34, so I actually reached a little bit for him. I thought among the other potential one-off type of guys, I thought Saquon was interesting, and I also felt like J.K. Dobbins, just because of how cheap he is. I think everyone knows that the Ravens will be done after this weekend, but Dobbins has looked awesome since returning.
Yeah, Dobbins is great. I'm still totally off the Ravens. I think the Ravens are so bad and project so drearily for their game that it actually is making me less enthusiastic about the Bengals too. Like, the worst case scenario for the Bengals is they beat the Ravens like 30-7, and they do it without any of Chase or Higgins or Burrow really going off. Like, P. Ryan has 2 touchdowns, defensive touchdowns, something like that. And then they would play the Bills, wouldn't they? Or am I mixing that up? They would play the Bills,
because
the Chiefs would get the lower seed. So it's like Buffalo's obviously quite intimidating. They could still lose. I mean, I think you're totally right that the Bengals are capable of beating pretty much any team, and that includes the Bills. And certainly the Bills, their offense is not exactly I don't know. It's like it seemed a little topsy turvy to me. So I'm definitely not just siding with the Bills, but also out of due respect for the Bills, my paranoid unfolding of events for the Bengals players like Jamar Chase, especially who goes I think in the top like 7 picks on underdog, something like that, really close to Burrow too, for understandable enough reasons. But what if Chase plays like 35 snaps against the Ravens because the Ravens are complete no shows, and then against the Bills he gets you like whatever he has. Let's just say he has a perfectly good game against the Bills, but they still lose. And it's like, man, you get basically in effect like one game out of Jamar Chase, and all that potential squandered in the process just because of if it goes that way, it would be because the Bills are basically a buzzsaw round 2 matchup. But yeah, these things can go either way, except for the Ravens game. They can't win under any scenario, so they're gonna lose. But yeah, Bengals, Chiefs, Bills, teams like that, and on the NFC side too. I mean, I don't want to fade the Eagles. I really like the Eagles, but I think they're in a kind of dangerous spot where they could be a one and done kind of thing, and or at least like it wouldn't be unforgivable to me if they lost their first game. So they go for the highest price in the NFC, but to me don't have a likelihood of playing as many games as the 49ers, let alone more.
Exactly. So I'm definitely a lot more leveraged on the Niners because they're playing this weekend.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like their experience and everything. Not that the Eagles didn't make the postseason last year, but that they got kind of smoked by the Buccaneers, or maybe even not kind of. You don't really need to qualify that one. That was pretty much a layup there for the Bucs. I don't think that directly applies for this year, but I'm with you where I get a set. I'm a little bit tentative on saying that the Eagles are going to make it all the way to Arizona for the Super Bowl. I think we've kind of covered our bases as far as the underdog or the best ball strategy for the postseason is concerned. So why don't we go ahead and jump into these games? We'll kick things off Saturday afternoon. We have the Seahawks going to San Francisco. The Niners are 9.5-point favorites. The over/under in this one, 42. Two games with very different things going on. You had Trey Lance, I believe, start the game against the Seahawks in like week 2, something like that, and then Brock Purdy later on in the season on that Thursday night game up in Seattle. But either way, the results were pretty resounding in both of those games. I think games in which a team has swept the regular season matchup are like 20-14 against them if they rematch in the Super or in the playoffs. So it's definitely more often than not that beating a team 3 times can happen under those setups. So I'm of the opinion that the Niners kind of roll here, but where are you with this one?
Definitely picking the 49ers. I kind of go back and forth in my head as to how competitive the game might be, because I feel like the Seahawks, I don't know why that, like, it doesn't really make sense to me either how they've been this good, but as long as they get production from Geno Smith that he's gotten all year, even when, you factor in the lowered expectations against a defense this good, it's like just having a quarterback as good as Geno and having a like a playoff tested. I know they're not so veteran in their personnel at this point, but like the coaches certainly are, and they got a few guys who know a little bit about playing in the playoffs on the team. So I would be surprised if the Seahawks were the kind of team that have like a undignified showing, even if they lose. Like I think they'll kind of make the 49ers actually win it, not just kind of hand it over. So I the problem is, of course, particularly the Seahawks offense. It's hard to see what they get going against a defense this good. And Kenneth Walker, he's good, but he could easily go like 25 or more likely, I guess, 20 or 18 carries for something like 45, 50 yards in this game. And if that happens, it's all on Geno Smith. And I think the 49ers could get Metcalf matched up a lot with Travarius Ward, which is not great for Metcalf because Ward's one of the taller and vertically more explosive corners in the league. He's been a really good fit in the DeMeco Ryans scheme this year. So that could be cause for giving DK Metcalf a lower projection than normal. And that's just a lot of slack falling on, I guess, Tyler Lockett and like the tight ends. So it would have to be a very low scoring game, I feel like, for the Seahawks to have a shot. And their defense is as much as I was just saying, it's concerning for the Seahawks offense against the San Francisco defense. All year, the Seahawks defense has just kind of had conventionally bad metrics, and it's hard to see how. I mean, maybe something gets better. Maybe they turn some kind of corner. I don't know, but it seems unlikely. And the 49ers having fewer than something like 24 points just doesn't seem likely. And it's also difficult to imagine the Seahawks getting even that high.
Right. So, but it's the situation or the scenario, I'm sorry, in which the Seahawks get this done. I think there's just such like a narrow probability of that actually
They need
unfolding.
like trick play or something.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe Pete gets in his bag for this one, but I don't know. This one being in San Francisco, it's not quite like the Beastquake game from 11, 12 years ago or whatever. I just feel like this is like the start of a pretty serious run here for the 49ers as we get further into the postseason.
To dovetail backtrack even a little bit to the best ball stuff, after Josh Allen, who I think is the clear 101 because he could be the highest scoring player in all of the weeks as a player without a bye. Christian McCaffrey could be that in the NFC. He could be the number one player. And it's why I believe he's the second pick in Underdog's ADP, even ahead of Mahomes, because you got that first week. And it's like if the 49ers advance, not only is it easy enough for me anyway to imagine that, but if they do, it's almost inconceivable that McCaffrey wouldn't have some of the biggest numbers in each round and maybe even like the biggest numbers. So he's a really good one to get in best ball, I think, because for me it's like Josh Allen 1, McCaffrey 2, and probably like I guess you got to put Mahomes 3, or there's a case for Mahomes 3. For me, Diggs is like 4 or something like that because I'm trying to get those stars who might play every week, and McCaffrey, of course, is that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm feeling a little anxious about my lack of McCaffrey, so I might have to dip back in,
I like
grab
all
one
three
more.
of those running backs for the price too. Even Jordan Mason in the last round, it's like he could. It's not hard to imagine him getting like 8 carries in a game because Elijah Mitchell had calf cramps for a couple drives or something.
Yeah, no, I do have at least one Jordan Mason share as we get this rolling. Before we get on over to our next game, we do have a message from our friends over at Blue Wire. All right, let's get over to the Saturday night game. We got the Chargers, road favorites against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who just won the AFC South last weekend. Your thoughts on the Chargers being favored here by 2.5?
Yeah, I would take them to cover that pretty safely, and I'm probably a bigger like Jaguars players fan and more of a critic of Brandon Staley's and Joe Lombardi's than most people. I just think that for whatever his faults, and I certainly have a bit of a list here. Brandon Staley is a pretty smart defensive schemer, and it drives me crazy that he does it, but he is basically conceding the rushing yardage that the Chargers give up. I'm sure he would like to stop the run a little bit better. He's just not willing to do anything to make it actually happen. So to me, it's like, what's the difference? He doesn't care about defending the run, which it drives me insane. But there are times where I guess to be fair to him, there are some games where he will change it up a little bit. Like I guess that last 49ers game, especially, it's like they don't contain Christian McCaffrey that way with their usual game plan. So Staley showed the ability to change it. If he is smart enough to look at this Jaguars offense and see ETN as the almost singular threat to his defense, they can probably come up with, like they did against the 49ers with McCaffrey, they can probably come up with something to contain ETN. And if you contain ETN, I think the Jaguars are just like a non-starter in this matchup because the Jaguars defense pretty much sucks. And I think Herbert spreading them out going a lot of 3-4 wide, testing that cornerback depth. It's not really going to matter that much that the Chargers offense is impotent, even in theory, because it's like Herbert will just eat up openings all day and just, I think, get them downfield. And Eckler could have a really huge game without even really trying that much. So it's just really easy for me to imagine the Chargers moving the ball, getting points. Whereas with the Jaguars, that pass defense, now with Joey Bosa coming back, it's tough. So when I was talking about the Staley's indifference to stopping the run, a lot of that is he does all this off coverage stuff where he's just got the corners sitting like 7-8 yards downfield. And you look at the box and it's like this is like a 4.5, 5-man box or something because he's just padding against the pass so much. But I don't think he needs to do that to contain Trevor Lawrence when Zay Jones is overexposed as a wide receiver 2. Marvin Jones would be overexposed playing any amount of snaps. So it's 10 on 11, and the Chargers are kind of sitting back against that pass defense further. So I don't see how Lawrence really gets going well in this one. All the slack falls to ETN in my mind. And I love ETN, and if the Chargers don't take him seriously, he will torch them. Like, he could go – if you're not careful with ETN with a run defense like this, he could go over like 200 yards on you. So I expect them to be careful, therefore. I don't think he's going to just totally ignore the ETN threat. And as long as he takes care of that, I don't think this is all that close, honestly.
Dang. Okay. That's different than I was expecting because we do like to bag on Staley, but it's good to, give him credit
got a
where
much
it's
more
due.
veteran and polished roster too, and it's like next year with Calvin Ridley, very different question.
Sure, no, absolutely. And Lawrence missed some throws last weekend, but I don't see that. I see that as an aberration, not really a sign of things to come. Even with this being his first postseason game, it's also Herbert's, and I don't know if you saw, but it came across as of today, Friday, that Mike Williams is not going to be playing.
All right. Sorry, that was I meant to go a little bit into the list of things that I'm mad at Staley about, and that's definitely one of them.
Last week,
his situational just common sense it's just not there. Like he'll just he I don't know if it's because he's so ideologically bound to that just analytics brain thing of like, if you see a number on a sheet and someone says it's data or whatever, you have to listen to it. I don't know if he like lets. He probably has better common sense than he acts out. That he suspends his better judgment because he hears some stupid snake oil pitch about why actually it's cool to do stupid things, and here's why. He'll just like swallow. He'll believe anything he reads on Vox.com or whatever. So like the corollary of that is he will subscribe to anything that like the right authority tells him to believe, and I think it's like he should be smarter. I don't know if he could get better Zach Taylor made a big step forward this year as a coach. Like sometimes coaches do just get better and start making better decisions. Staley could be that, but yeah, he's got to just kind of, I can't really say what he's got to do because he's got to get his head out of his what, John.
That's right. That I feel the same way. But no, there is room for him to get it right. But I feel like that'd be more of like an off-season change. So that's definitely a potential issue for this game. But I'm still on the Jags to cover and potentially win this one.
To be clear, I might be a pre-tilting or something, or a reverse jinx tilting or something.
We got to get our guy Waylon a playoff win here. I'd love to see it. The most notable Jags fan on the internet, arguably. But
Irish Jack. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I didn't mean to bury that as well. Irish Jack, obviously, a big stronghold in the Jags community on the internet. But yeah, I mean, talent to talent, the Chargers have the better roster. It's in Jacksonville.
That pass rush too, man. With Bosa and Mack at the same time, the defense is going to look different than it has all regular season. Is the other thing.
That is a problem, and I potentially maybe gave the Jags defense a little bit too much credit for how they played last weekend against Josh Dobbs.
Josh Dobbs inexplicably they didn't even run with him, man. I can't believe that stuff. Vrabel let me down. Not that I wanted the Titans to win, but I wanted to see the wishbone. That was the time. That was the chance.
It was. They did cover though, so that was good.
It's still. I don't think we're gonna miss Todd Downing in Tennessee. Like, see, it's almost anything else by now.
Agreed. All right, so let's go ahead and hop over to Sunday. So I guess we're a little bit split on the Chargers Jags outcome, but can see it either way. That's again one of the closer, tied for the closest spread on the slate this weekend. This next one, the largest, Bills Dolphins. Bills 13.5-point favorites. Expectation, of course, being that Skylar Thompson gets the start. And I was talking with Nick on the sports betting podcast, and it was basically we came to the conclusion that if the Dolphins are going to do anything here, they need to lean into whatever strength Skylar Thompson may or may not have. And to me, just let hit, like you were just saying about Dobbs. I think Skylar Thompson needs to run, because early in his K-State career, he was pretty effective. He had a season with 11 rushing touchdowns while he was at K-State, and well over 400 yards pretty routinely early on. Got a little bit dinged up later on in his K-State career, but he has that in his bag, I believe. And that's really the only way. I don't think that the Dolphins are going to be able to keep a lid on this Bills offense. And if Thompson has a bunch of 3-and-outs, this one's a wrap pretty much right off the bat. But I'm just trying to see a game or a way in which this game could be even a little bit interesting.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine it, but I think with that said, it's still clear how it would have to happen for the Dolphins. It's just kind of impossible sounding. But basically, they need to shorten the game. They probably want to keep the Bills under something like 55 snaps and keep themselves under something like 50 by just running out the play clock pretty much every time they get the ball, or at least after they get favorable field positioning or they get a lead. But to do either of those second things, they need to make Josh Allen turn over the ball at least 2 times. And even if they shorten the game, if Josh Allen turns it over 2 times and they let the Bills run 65, 70 plays, they still lose. They still give them enough time for the Bills to get another lead. So the Dolphins can't keep a lead. They need to get one by miraculous means and then make the game anomalously short, basically. That's the only way they can do this. So if they have to make Thompson throw the ball 25 times, it's over. Like, they have to get it. They have to keep him exposed as little as possible. And they need, Xavier Howard, if he has another interception in him, like they need 2 of them for him in this game. And then they need to sit on the ball and make leave just enough time that Josh Allen can't easily just, over a long sample correction, catch back up with them.
Yeah, and Allen, he's had turnover issues this season, throughout his career.
He will always be that too. He's been a turnover guy, so it's like the Dolphins do have that tiny chance, and it's kind of real, but also Skylar Thompson.
But also Skylar Thompson, of course. But when it comes to Allen, 6 touchdowns and no picks against Miami, so maybe that pick is coming.
It could be. I'll definitely take the Bills to roll pretty easily, because I think the Dolphins' secondary personnel is just rough. Like, they can't do anything about Diggs, in particular. The reason I say it's so bad what Diggs presents to them is that if they try to do anything to stop him, it just kind of lets loose a flood in another part of the defense. So they'd have to roll so much coverage over to Diggs, and they probably will try anyway. But then on the other side, you're going to have Gabe Davis lined up against 5'9", 180 Keon Crossan, who's supposed to basically be a special teams player, and you might not have a safety over there if they're all rolling toward Diggs. So I feel like Allen, even if he turns it over, he's probably going to get the big plays to make up for it in this one. And you worry about the turnovers more against, the teams ahead, the Bengals especially.
Sure. No, exactly. I was just trying to do the Dolphins a bit of a service here, but, realistically.
I like Mike McDaniel.
Absolutely.
I kind of like, if I had to pick somebody to maybe make the upset happen, he'd be on the short list, but yeah. So it's I do want to say also like that stuff from the Miami guy Armando Salguero saying like they might fire McDaniel if he didn't win that game last week. It's like that was ridiculous. Mike McDaniel after Dable or right around Dable is coach of the year, and it's obvious.
Yeah, no,
Tomlin, I don't know,
he's
somebody like
he's very
that.
promising. I like that guy. He's kind of a breath of fresh air compared to most NFL coaches. He says what's on his mind. He's different kind of cat, but yeah, I feel a little bit robbed that the Dolphins are limping into the playoffs the way that they
Oh
are
yeah, absolutely.
because I feel like that they could have absolutely given the Bills a real game. If we had a fully healthy Tua, but that just is not in the cards, unfortunately. So give me the Bills to win this one comfortably and cover as well. Let's go Giants Vikings. This one has real split action. I think that we're looking at 51% of the money was coming in on the Giants as of yesterday, and obviously 49% on the Vikings, and that's the money that's being bet on the spread. So that this kind of is that Goldilocks line, and it's 3 points, so that this could definitely be a push. And I almost see it landing exactly at a push, just because the Vikings are incapable of doing anything other than one score games for the most part. We saw this game or this matchup on Christmas Eve, I want to say, and the Vikings just barely squeaked it out on that one. But what's your take here?
It's a tough one because excuse me, Brian Dable I think is way ahead of O'Connell, and particularly with O'Connell being first year guy as young as he is. I don't want to act like he's not maybe going to get better eventually, but right now I think Dable is way ahead of him, and so that the Vikings might have the more talented roster overall doesn't reel me in quite the way that it should, quite the way that it should, especially when they're going against an offense. But with Daniel Jones and the Giants don't even have any defense. It's like it's puzzling that they stay as competitive as they are. They're doing a great job coaching both sides of the ball. Or at least the secondary is bad on the defense. Their front like three is oddly good. So anyway, for best ball, playoff best ball, this is a really, I think, kind of momentous game because either Saquon Barkley advances as a low ADP player, in which case he's after McCaffrey, I guess you'd say the NFC running back with the highest. Yeah, it's probably
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I'm not putting Sanders ahead of him.
Right, and Dalvin looks a little weird, but Dalvin too. He's important in this game. If good Dalvin all of a sudden shows up, and I feel like that's happened before. I feel like we've had times where it's like he looks a little slow for a few weeks, and then he has a 200-yard game when we're all like, "Oh, Dalvin's too hurt to have a big game here." So he could pop up, especially because the Giants. They're going to have to try to sell out to stop Justin Jefferson. I think they already were last time. I really think last time, 11 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown. That was probably the best case scenario. That's what it looks like when you're doing a great job. So if they don't do a great job, or if Jefferson just kind of goes nuts, he can still go nuts, and thus, he's also one of the most important questions because if he makes it to the second round, he could give you. He's probably not getting to the third. I mean, the Vikings they're basically just Justin Jefferson
Yep.
in that offensive line, I guess you might say. So they're probably not getting to the third round, but we've seen him have like peel off a spree of 30-plus point games, and it wouldn't be shocking to me that if the Vikings eke this one out, it's because Jefferson went completely insane. Like playoff Justin Jefferson against a defense like this with poor corner personnel. He's got to be. If you can place a ticket on something like setting the playoff receiving record or whatever, like this would be a pretty good one because they could lose the game and he could still put up a monster number. And if they win the game, it's probably because he was particularly efficient with his
Mm-hmm.
always high usage. So yeah, he's gonna go nuts in this one probably, and it's up to the Giants to kind of I don't know, just not let Dalvin also get going is like maybe the best you can do against the Vikings is to let Jefferson kind of go nuts and hope no one else does anything. But I got to go with the Vikings. And I was just kind of talking up how much I like Dable and everything, but uh, if Daniel Jones goes through a whole regular season with really low turnover percentage for him, I still think that's something you can only hide for so long, and I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of just turns it over a bunch in this game. But his receivers do have the advantage. The Vikings defense is pretty bad in the secondary. If the pass rush doesn't bail them out, they pretty consistently have issues, including against Hodgins and Richie James the last time these two teams played. So definitely don't want to count the Giants out, but between Jones, I think basically having an unsustainable touchdown to turnover ratio and being who he's always been, and even in this good season with Jones, it's been like difficult as it always is. So I'll go with the Vikings, but that's mostly just kind of out of concern about Jones and respect for Jefferson and what he can do. But if the Giants win, then yeah, Saquon Barkley could be pretty important in best ball because he could have a good game here, and that'd probably be the Eagles that they go against. Yeah, so if they go against the Eagles, not a pushover defense by any means, but you can imagine a lot of usage getting funneled toward him, and their linebackers are not particularly good. So yeah, that 230-point game thing I think is in effect for Eckler, Justin Jefferson, and Saquon Barkley, even though they're all also at risk of losing in the first round and certainly the second.
Yeah, I like the way that you tied those three together, and their importance overall in this tournament structure for best ball. Let's say the Giants win on Sunday. How does that happen?
I guess you could say they slow down Jefferson. I just don't think they can. So more realistically, I think they got to find some way to let only Jefferson hurt them. If he gets 170 yards and 3 touchdowns and no one else does a whole lot, you might be able to beat them. And you got to get to at least 24, obviously. But I think the Giants can do that. The Vikings defense kind of overachieved a lot of the year, specifically their corner personnel is pretty weak. Maybe guys like Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins aren't quite talented enough to stick as starters in the NFL, but they both had big games the last time out. Darius Slayton's speed compels them to stay back, so I think that might happen again. Or if the maybe that's how the Giants could win, I guess. If the Vikings try to roll too much coverage toward Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins and they don't take Slayton seriously enough, because Slayton can run right past those guys. Slayton getting behind the defense is how you get Daniel Jones to have an anomalously high return for his usage. So those two things happening, and I think you need at least like a customary, customary kind of game from Saquon Barkley. Like if Barkley has a bad game, it's like that alone makes it tough for me to imagine how the Giants stay in it.
Yeah, because points wise, that if Barkley doesn't have at least one touchdown type of thing, like it's like how are they going to get the rest of
And
what
he
they
needs to
need?
get them to scoring range a lot. So if he's not getting yardage from scrimmage, that's really concerning to me because it's kind of all on Jones. And like we know he's not afraid. We know he's gonna take on the moment with everything. But it's like Jones is a guy who's gonna finish his NFL career completing like 63% of his passes for 6.7 yards per pass. It's like those are numbers that are bad in the 90s.
I just can't get over like the contrast of him like being like a really good runner and everything, the kind of like this wild dude on the field while also just having all the vibes of like a PwC summer intern. But
what is PwC? Sorry,
it's one of like the big accounting firms.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a testament to him. I guess he's just tougher than he looks, or whatever, crazier than he looks.
Yeah, no, yeah, he absolutely is. But yeah, just a little stray comment there as we wrap up our Giants Vikings discussion. Let's go Ravens Bengals. Me personally,
Do we have
I don't
to?
know if we don't have to do this for
I'm
very
kidding,
long.
but yeah.
I will say though, as someone who is a Ravens fan, lifelong, there couldn't be a worse time slot for this game to be put in. Just bury it in the Sunday afternoon window when people are like still like getting home from church or something, because everyone's going to be settled in to watch the last game of the weekend. Everyone's going to be on Twitter, and it is oh, it's not going to be fun for 3 hours. It's going to be a bloodbath, pure and simple.
Yeah, it's going to be such a bad game that while people are watching it and being on Twitter, they're probably just going to talk about Justin Fields instead or something. This game is dreary in basically every conceivable way. I mean, yeah, you got injuries and just discord all over the place on the Ravens offense, and I can't believe the Demarcus Robinson offense didn't work out. I thought it was looking good there for a while, but now he's down to 6.1 yards per target. And Greg Roman still probably thinks he's better than Duvernay. I know Duvernay's been out, but it's like Greg Roman was just setting up all those outside routes for Robinson and wasted it. Wasted Lamar's career so far. I hope it's the last season he has a chance to do that. However, that needs to happen. Hate this Ravens offense. The defense is good. The defense will show up, but it's going to have to defend short fields. It might watch its offense give up points to the Bengals. So I don't think the Bengals need to do much. I think this could be a Pirine game. I don't know what the Ravens can really do to defend themselves over a 4-quarter sample.
Yeah, it's going to be bleak, and I feel like also I feel like the Ravens defense is a little bit overrated.
I think it's been improving though. They've missed. They've had Marcus Williams back for about a month now, and Roquan Smith for about a month, and that's really helped. They still don't. The problem is the main problem is what's been a problem for like 5 years now is like they still don't have a pass rush, and like if they had the pass rush, it'd be a monstrous defense because you can't run on them, and if even when you don't have the pass rush getting to you, it's still kind of hard to throw on them when the secondary is decently healthy. But yeah, it's like I just hate the vibes of the Ravens. I think it's all off now. I think honestly, even Harbaugh should go, is how I see it. But I understand that people are kind of loath to ever take that kind of stand, especially with Lamar maybe leaving or not knowing what's going on in any case. Like they're going to want some kind of stability, I suppose. But I don't see what this is worth. It just seems like a waste of time to me.
I was ready for Harbaugh to go after the 2017 season, the year before they brought Lamar Jackson in. But I'm good with him coaching as long as he wants to. Roman, we've established it is
even if he says Greg Roman you have to be roommates with Greg, even if he says that.
That might be a bridge too far for me as far as my Harbaugh support. But beyond that,
you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna say like Greg's going to look for opportunities. He's going to I don't know, be head coach of New Hampshire or something, and then they're going to hire David Shaw.
Oh,
as offensive coordinator.
Don't do that to me. No, I need the Broncos to make that mistake first. Clock's ticking.
All right, yeah. But anyway, hopefully this game isn't, as depressing as it probably can be.
Yeah, I don't even know what I want the takeaways to be. Like that, this one, it just feels like such a foregone conclusion that
it's going to feel like punishment, man. It's going to feel like you did something wrong, and this is your punishment. You got to watch this.
It's like I already got that from the travel gods that this week trying to get my way back here from LA. Like enough. But yeah, I don't think there's really much to add on to this one. And then let's wrap up with Cowboys Bucks. This one I feel like I have the least idea of what's going to happen because the Buccaneers have been bad all year. They've covered 4 games or something. Like they haven't been good. They just benefited obviously from winning the NFC South, and the Cowboys they've had stretches where they look like one of the best teams in the league. But they never seem to string it together. You never feel confident that the team that shows up that looks great is going to be there again the following week. Old Ed Werder had an interesting stat yesterday about the Cowboys' performance on turf versus grass this year.
He's lifting that from Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett's been prattling about this for weeks.
Oh no! Okay. Well,
I really think it's just one of those sample size quirks. It's like they play at home on a turf, so it's like
I agree.
They had like they had like 5 big games at home, just wreck the whole sample as far as what you could glean from the playing surface significance. But I agree, it's tough to tell where this is going just because both teams seem so bad, and uh, it's like the Buccaneers defense looks good as the Dallas defense generally looks good too, but the Tampa Bay offense has put up eggs against much weaker defenses than this year, and other than that Carolina game, Tom Brady has not been able to get it going with Mike Evans the way a player like Mike Evans is, always should be producing. So I kind of doubt they really turned some kind of corner or found some new trick in that game. But touchdown Tim, I guess it's possible. Playoff time comes around, and the supernatural starts to occur. So can't count that out. But if he's playing like he did in the other 16 games, it's hard to see. It's hard to see how they beat like pretty much most of the playoff teams, let alone Dallas. So I don't think Dallas is bad, and I really feel like God, it was like 3 weeks ago that people were kind of, I feel like, seriously entertaining like, oh, Dallas could really take the NFC though, actually. And then like 2 games. Dallas always plays bad in Washington. I don't remember the last time they played well in Washington. So like that Washington made them look bad. I think it's kind of it's people are focusing too much on how bad Washington is and not what that matchup is between those two teams. And I don't know if you're so shocked by Dallas looking bad against Washington. I think it's just you don't know that much about either team. And I think it's people kind of overreacting, especially when people say like, "Oh, Dak sucks." Like Dak does not suck. Dak, by the way, is playing on an offense that doesn't give him a whole lot of help. I mean, they don't like those. If it wasn't for Dak being who he is and CeeDee Lamb being as particularly good as he is, people would spend a lot more time noticing like, these other tight ends and receivers suck. These guys suck. They're not good at all. And it's like Dak has to kind of just deal with all that as defenses are gunning for Lamb, and the offensive line is the worst it's been in years. Tyron Smith looks like he might be a problem on the right side. I don't know. It's a lot. You can imagine either offense kind of just getting kicked in the teeth in this game, and it could be both too. So I don't know. I feel like turnovers are going to get involved. Sacks are probably going to get involved. Tom Brady doesn't turn the ball over nearly as much as Dak, as much as
Right.
I'm, a Dak defender. But then again, Tom Brady can't make explosive plays that Dak can, especially at this point. So I have no leaning, but I will say I don't find the stuff about like the playing surface or like Dak hate. I don't find that particularly compelling as arguments.
Okay, fair enough. So as it stands, 55% of the money is on the Buccaneers and 45 on the Cowboys. So that seems to suggest that I think there's an implication from the public that touchdown Tom gets it done, and actually 66% of the money line handle is indeed on the Buccaneers. So that's pretty significant. But I'm on the
I have
Cowboys
no.
for this one.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I can't argue with it, and I can't argue with whatever you were about to say either. Sorry.
Well, trust me, it's not overly compelling, but I just feel like this is a Buccaneers team that really isn't very good. They basically are just benefiting from their schedule and also how the NFL does their playoffs, where if you win a division, no matter how bad it is, you get a home playoff game. And I think on balance, this is a much better Dallas team. I don't think what we saw in Week 1 is really going to be instructive as far as what we're going to see Monday night in this one. And I think that the Buccaneers offensive line is still a problem. So, Parsons could go crazy in this one. And if that ends up happening and Brady gets a little bit rattled or tries to, or has to get the ball out extremely quickly, which has been the case a lot of the time this year, then the field shrinks on itself. And all of a sudden, like the Buccaneers can't move the ball at all.
Yeah, I guess if you really make me pick, I'll say Dallas. I think Dak is better than Tom at this point. I think the Tampa Bay defense is probably a little more solid. Certainly, it's more healthy than the Dallas defense, especially in the secondary. But I don't know if Tom can't make a play downfield. Uh, I I don't know. I think at some point he will press more than he does usually. Like he doesn't turn the ball over normally because he's very cautious. But if the game starts to get closer to the end, and if he hasn't made a big play, and if the running game isn't bailing him out otherwise, I do think eventually Tom, just because he thinks about probabilities and stuff, he'll have the thought occur. It's like, well, if I don't make the play downfield in the next 2 drives, then we might lose. And it's like, that's when the turnover has to happen, because like that's why like all the tension is heading toward. I think like that particular part of the game, assuming Dallas doesn't just have like a turnover meltdown on the other side.
Yeah. So provided that meltdown does not occur, I do feel good-ish about Dallas, but it's good to talk through all the scenarios in this game, what needs to happen for either side to get the win. But that's going to wrap things up for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. We'll be back, of course, next week breaking down the NFL divisional round. Cheers.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.